Okay, now I want to construct a segment 50% longer than the segment that I've drawn here. So, how am I going to do that? Well, the same way I did this one, except now I want to construct the segment parallel to the original segment, starting at some given point. So I'm going to make the given point here. So I'm going to want to construct a segment 50% longer than this one, starting here. Okay, well, first thing I do is I do the same thing I did over here. Now my compass is too short to do this, so I'm adapting my straight edge, which fortunately has some holes in it. I have a Sharpie through one hole, and I'm going to put the chalk through another hole so that when I rotate this around, the chalk, assuming I can keep the point of the Sharpie in a constant position, the chalk should trace the arc of a circle. So here we go. Now I'm going to put the point of the Sharpie on one end of the segment, and oh, that worked really well. That was actually very easy. Okay, I was hoping that would work. Okay, now if I can reverse my hands here, I can do the same thing over here. So here we go. Okay, now I can draw a segment perpendicular to the first and through the midpoint of my original segment. Now I'm extending this line down here for a reason. And if you haven't figured out how I'm going to construct a segment that's parallel to this one and starting at this point and 50% longer than this one, let's just start with the question of how am I going to construct a line that's parallel to this one. Okay, well, you should pause and think about that for a minute, and if you've already done so and haven't come up with a conclusion, note that this line here is perpendicular to this line, so think about it just a little more. How could I use what I have here to construct a line that's parallel to this one? Okay, well, I could take a bisector between any 2 points of this line. I could take any 2 points on this line and construct a perpendicular bisector. And that perpendicular bisector, being perpendicular to this line, would be parallel to this line. Why? Because lines that are perpendicular to the same line have to be parallel to one another. Now that doesn't necessarily solve the problem of finding the line that's perpendicular or that's parallel to this one that starts at this point. But it does allow us to find a line that's parallel to the original. Well, it takes a little more to find a line parallel to this one that goes through this point. But it turns out that that isn't particularly challenging if we know what to do. And I hope, actually, yeah, pretty good shape here. Okay, I'm just going to draw this arc. Okay, now I had the point here, this arc, then not going to talk about the proof. I will say, just to indicate how you prove that this works, is from here to here is the same as from here to here. So if I drew a triangle here, it would be isosceles. So it's, as it turns out then there's a little bit of geometric argument necessary to establish this, but if I bisect the segment from here to here, it's going to, the bisector is going to have the property that a line from here through the bisector is parallel to this, is perpendicular first to this line, and then is, as a result, parallel to this line. And then I'll be able to draw my line through this point that's parallel to this line, and then all I've got to do is make it 50% longer, which is no different than what I did up here. Should have maybe marked that point more clearly. Excuse me. Okay. So now I need to bisect this segment. Now, I'm not going to be able to get my Sharpie through the strap at the point, or at the distance I'd really like to be working with. Let me see what I mean here in a minute. So I'm going to use the point of the compass through one of the small holes in this strap, and I'm going to put that there. So now I'll be able to construct this arc, and then I'll do the same thing down here. A little difficult to find that point. Now wait a minute. Okay, that distance was here, right. And this distance is going to be here. Drawing more of the arc than I really need to, but here we go. Okay. I haven't really practiced using that device. Now this doesn't work out real well just because of the various inaccuracies with this device, so I'm going to kind of fudge a little bit. We see that this intersection is a little bit too low, but if I draw the line segment through these 2 points, it's not even going to hit this point. If this is done accurately, and remember I had to look around the strap and everything to see where the point was going to go here and where it was going to go here, and also there are little discrepancies in where the chalk, the distance of the chalk from the point of rotation. I'm not going to discuss that. There are little inaccuracies in using this that cause these points not to align the way they should. This point, and this point should line the same straight line. And now I'm going to just extend that line for a ways with a straight edge. And maybe even a little further, because I want to be sure that I can get a line 50% longer than this one. Now, how I'm going to accomplish the line 50% longer? That's not going to stretch out nearly far enough. So I'm going to use another device. I'm going to use 2 pieces of chalk here to measure this distance. Now normally I would use a compass, but I'm going to measure this distance here, which is about the length of 2 pieces of chalk, and that should match this distance if this point is directly below this one. I tried to make it that way. It didn't necessarily work out exactly right, but that seems to work. So it seems like I got the position of that point. Then I can mark, again, the same distance. Imagine this is a compass, a larger compass, maybe spread out to a lesser angle. And then I do this, and now from here to here is a line segment that, given accurate construction, will be parallel to this line and half again as long, 50% longer. So right here is my segment. Okay. Now I'm going to do another video where I explain that a little more briefly, and where you don't have to watch me fumble around with the instruments. In other words, I'm going to explain it as I would to somebody who's a little more used to using compass and straight edge. But there we have it. And the rest of this line is irrelevant. Just the orange part is the line that we wanted to construct. So we've established that we can construct a segment 50% longer, parallel to the original, starting at any given point. Now you might want to think ahead, how are we going to do a line that's 25% longer than this one, or 125% longer, or 75% longer?